As I was just mentioning, we will be hearing about Bernice, and Bernice is someone who had a huge impact um, in the world. And I suppose the world that we live in today is still the world of kind of drafted by Bernice, at least. And it's kind of scary, but he's a powerful individual who came up with a lot of um, theories and principles, and these have been used for the past 100 plus years, and we still use them today. They are not obsolete. On the contrary, they may be more current than ever. So, having said this, I'm going to welcome everyone. I think there may be one or two person missing, so we'll get started. This one is another quote that was said, I think, first time it was said as far as Mr. Jamie Dimon was in 2008. Obviously, in 2008, he was mentioning about the financial crisis, the prime and mortgage crisis and so forth. When you see one cockroach, that means there are probably more. And fortunately, he said that again for the second time last November. So he's a little bit like Bernice. When he says something, you need to watch out. But anyhow, hopefully, Um, that's not gonna get worse. But I thought of him last weekend because I was clearing an old house, and it was true. When I saw one cockroach, usually there was another one pretty soon that I would see again. So it's at least it worked for me last weekend when I was moving furniture from an old house. Um, so now talking about what is marketing, I always go back to this. It's like, oh, Professor, we know by now. Yeah, but let's. I just want to make sure it's clean in your head. It's the delivery of customer satisfaction at profit and long term. And if there was one word that would summarize it, it would be satisfaction, because when you are a person who is in business, the most important person is not the boss, is not the employee, is not the product, is not the banker, is not the production people, the engineering. The most important person is the customer. If there are no customers, there are no businesses. If you have a great customers, if you cherish your customers, you usually increase your satisfaction. If you increase your satisfaction, your business will make profit. If you make profit, you have more to grow your business and keep satisfying your customers. In fact, there was question about this. There were the open-ended questions. So there was 30 multiple choice and two open-ended. Um, I just want to say a few things. I mentioned um, at least two times, probably even as a memo inside the announcement, maybe as an email, but at least in class, so maybe more than two times, that you had to be very careful about the open-ended questions and not to answer them briefly. Yeah, I succeeded to do this year. There was nobody that said yes or no to the open-ended questions. That's a miracle. That's the first MIA doesn't say yes or no to the open-ended question. I can't see you all, but hopefully you're paying attention to what I'm saying, and you have a big smile and saying, "Yeah, well, Professor, you said it so much not to say yes or no to the open-ended that makes sense." And nobody did. Great. However, could people have done better? Yes. Were you kind of generous about the point that you gave to those open-ended answers? I was. Were you very, very generous? Can you be fully transparent, Professor? I was very, very generous. Wow, what can we do better? Well, there's some people, that went to so there was one question which was, should companies do marketing research? And there's some people, they didn't say yes. They say, yes, companies should do marketing research. I mean, it's better than yes, I suppose, but you want to elaborate a little bit more than just say yes to the question. Come on, professor. Students didn't do that. No, they did a little bit more. So they said, yes, you should do marketing research if you want your company to do well in a situation where businesses need to really do something in order to do well. So it was a little bit more elaborated, but it was, could there be more to the answer? Can people be more creative with the open answers? Um, what do you mean by creative? Well, maybe there's concepts. Maybe the first thing you want to do first is define again the question. Oh, let's define what is marketing research. Half of the people did, the students didn't. Half of the students did, said marketing research is, and they started the first line by a definition of what it was. Some people went further and talked about the differences of quantitative and qualitative data and the differences between quantitative and qualitative research and the fact that not all data are very good because some are more valid, some more reliable. Whoa, that's amazing. They went a little beyond the yes, you need to do marketing research. So they took up some components, not many components. Very few people did, 2 out of 21 talk about many components. Most talk about not too many, and then providing examples is really good. I would say there's 5 people that provided example and 16 that did not provide examples. So there's the full spectrum, which is the minimum is yes, but that's please don't do that. And the maximum is to really look at the component, the elements, the other words, keywords that will be related to the question, and then discuss it. So elaborate versus just be too brief, define versus just repeat the questions, justify and bring arguments and provide examples. So I don't want to do an whole entire class on why should someone do marketing research, but defining what is the marketing research is to identify, collect, analyze, and report information for the sake of making decisions. Um, Marketing luxury helps you to understand your environment, and it's the number one tool to create and identify and interpret the information from your environment. The environment is made of your micro and macro environment is made of that target thing that you had to study. All the elements in the targets are very important. The most important is the customers. Really, you do this because eventually you want to find see if there are problems, solutions, anything that you should focus on. And definitely, there's one thing that you should worry about when you're doing marketing research is identify opportunities. Hey, by the way, professor, that's what we're doing right now for Playita. Wow, if I had read that, I would have said, gee, that's great. They're thinking through. This person is alive and therefore going into details and relating it to. And there was like 2 people that says, in my case with Playita, I'm doing this and this and this and that and this and this and that and that. Wow, that's so amazing. Someone is relating this to Playita and so forth, the marketing research they're doing. 2 out of 21. So it's not enough, I think. But then so hopefully you understand what I mean by answering a question and this is good if you become a famous person, if you become a famous celebrity musician and someone asks you a question, you need to be good at elaborating because as the more you become famous, the more you get interviewed, the more you get interviewed, the more you have chances to look better, even so forth. So answering questions in interviews is an opportunity to excel, I think, because those interviews may be in front of 20 people or it may be in front of millions of people. So answering in the most intelligent, educated way, an open-ended question outside of yes and no, I think it's is great and it's going to make you stand out in front of the people. So I just say this with, I mean, I know I'm being recorded, but I just say this with really a care in the sense that I really want you to all do well. And I'm thinking, gee, you all going to compete in this world that is very competitive. You will even compete to some extent with one another. So you want to excel, and to excel is you have to give more to open-ended versus less. Anyone agrees and realizes that this may be kind of worth anything, or anyone wants to comment on that and go, gee, this is true. That was an opportunity to show how smart I am, and maybe I could have done better. I don't know. I'm just being honest.
Um, I'll elaborate. One of the important reasons to be able to give more than a yes and no answer is because if you can explain it, you know it. If you can't explain it, you don't know it. So
Exactly.
it tests where you are. Um, and that would be in any discipline, you know. You ask the doctor, why I need to take this medicine. And if he can't explain it to you, you're not going home and taking it.
That's true. Well, well,
So
it is interesting that you are the one that jumping on the microphone to actually comment on this because you are the one that
that wrote
definitely,
the essay.
yeah, that wrote the most. So it's just it's not a coincidence. But
Yeah,
I don't pick. I usually try to. I don't pick on people that didn't do well, but the people that did well should be noted, and you did very well.
I
And
think one of the thank you. I
yeah,
think one of the things that stood out to me when you said what is marketing that I learned is that when relating it to um, Milgram and
and Schopenhauer,
Schopenhauer, hmm I'm learning authority and what's the other one? Desire or authority?
emotions, emotions.
Yeah, and emotions. And I applied it. I would reflect on how I feel about shopping.
Yes, yeah.
I have a cousin, and we always say, "Oh, how you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm doing good. Did a little shopping therapy today."
Of course.
Without me knowing that I was just um, walking right into the hands of Schopenhauer. And then the authority I thought about, that's true. When I shop, I want that salesperson, whatever it is that I'm buying, to be an authority. And when they give me a good reason why this will solve my problem, or agree with me while I would, because I'll go and I'll say, you know what, I really need this because and they say, you're absolutely right, but have you thought of da 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 da? I said, oh no,
Exactly.
I haven't thought about that. Da, 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 da. And then I buy it. And I might buy
Exactly.
more than one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, so you're very open mind, curious mind, and that's very important. Um, Being curious is like the curiosity is usually a personality trait of a kid. But really, if anyone can keep this curiosity all their life, and then you never really age because you keep this very fresh, curious mind, and I think that's very, very important. And I see this at the university. It's very important because sometimes I see students, once they go over 30, then they become less curious and less open-minded. I see professors when they go over 40, they become sort of set. And the reason they're set is the knowledge that they got. They got it in the 90s, they got it in the 80s. And it's very difficult to replace old knowledge with new knowledge. And so research is this scarce mind, and research is the fact that you even want to be beat. Like I do research. Why do I do research? Because I want to beat my own statement. My past statement was, if you do this, this happens. But is it always true? And constantly being curious about what would be the different situation that will create something different. So being in research is to succeed is curiosity. It's not the status quo, and it's understanding that science is the only real science is when you do something and you repeat it and it keeps doing the same thing. That's when you really have science. But science is not something that is written in marble. Science evolves, knowledge evolves. Obviously, I don't know. I'm just thinking about one of the largest pharmaceutical company in the world called Merck. And Merck made a drug which is called Vioxx, and Vioxx is a drug um, that is illegal now in America because it killed more than 50,000 people. About 60,000 people died. I mean, that's essentially the amount of people that died in the war of Vietnam. So you have a drug made by an American company that killed as many people that died as soldiers in Vietnam. People don't think about this, but that's to me makes me curious. It's like, wow, do they sell it just in America? In fact, then you find that they sell it in over 100 countries, and then they sell it even in France, for example. And it's very interesting that someone in America will take the drug and die versus you will give it to a French person and he will take the drug. Apparently, they're not stopping that company in France, so they must not be killing the French, the Belgium, the Germans, the Dutch, the Italians, and all this. So it gets me curious. why? I've always been into the why, and I love the why. And in fact, I bug you with the I'm not so concerned about the what, but I'm concerned about the why. But that's the consulting part. It's very important to think about this. So it's expectable to get things standard from people that think standard, but it has to be from people that think outside, people that don't think alike, to come up with different configuration. And then maybe those different configuration is what makes the world, progress as well, because there's someone that thinks outside of the box. So it's very important to think outside of the box when you try to answer an open-ended question, by not being just trying to answer to the yes or the no and give a very boilerplate answer. So I recommend to everyone. I can Ashley went pretty far with it. I mean, you probably could go even further, but I'm recommending to everyone to try to go as far as you can with this. Any question on this one, the for the marketing research? Or I can move to the next one. So the next one was about profit. You know, why the marketing definition includes the concept of profits. And then people say, um, it it the marketing definition is about profit because without profit, a business would not be sustainable. So that's like the most boilerplate vanilla answer that people had. And it's insufficient. As you can imagine, there's this few, even more answers to the one that are on the screen right now. So for people to just say you need to have this to be sustainable and to have a long-term growth. But first define what is the marketing definition, fully define it. There was one third of the students that defined what was the marketing definition, and two-thirds that didn't. So always start with definition. I always talk about the elements inside the definition. Define the element. What is satisfaction? What is profit? What is long-term? Define as much as you can. And that's really what I wanted to talk about here, and maybe end up with an example. So it's this is something I always say after the first quiz, and I don't really say it in the after the second quiz because people pick themselves, and then I get long essays from 80%. So there's still 20% that are going to do one line on half, two lines, be very brief. I don't know why, but there will be 80% that will double, triple the volume of answer by trying to elaborate. In the next class, there's also two exams, and there are open-ended questions, and there again, people elaborate. So I feel like, it's my role to bring this up, and I don't think I'm asking for something that is strange to elaborate on an open-ended question, which is worth 20 points. Um, it's just, and I warned you, but I guess I warned you not enough, maybe, or but I don't know how much more I should have warned than I did. Any comments or any questions that someone wants to add?
About the question or about the
Oh,
profit or about
um, well, about this idea of the open-ended should be answered in more depth, but about the question as well, if there's anything that um,
well, okay. We, we're all adults here, right?
yes,
And in order to get in this program, we have to have a bachelor's degree. So we've been exposed to these type of questions. As a matter of
yes,
fact, to get out of uh, to graduate at the bachelor's level, you have to do a writing exam.
yes,
So writing is we're not any stranger to writing, and we commonly call this an essay question. And the definition of an essay is 3 sentences or
yeah,
more. So if you were asked the essay question and you don't have 3 sentences, you're not, yeah,
yeah, that's right.
being
Well,
honest in you.
yeah. Thank you, Ashley, for adding that comment about the answering to the open-ended questions. I think we're probably good today. I'm hoping everyone got the message, and then we'll elaborate more. Because I think you can do much better than you everyone did. So I'm just trying to lift everyone up. Obviously, if you're looking at the point that I gave you for your answers, they are like pretty much from 18 to 20. So I still gave very high grades, but I'm just letting you know that, I was expecting a little more, and I'm just being kind about it, I suppose, by letting you know, because it's possible the next time I may not want to see such short answers. But anyhow, there were people, not too many, there was like one or two people that really said something that was interesting about this concept of profits, which is mentioned here, but they say that the beauty of thinking about profits when it comes to the definition of marketing is it's a mathematical measure, it's an objective measure of success. So marketing is really a tool to increase, generate success. And therefore, how do you measure success? Profit is somewhat more very objective, and it's a good measure of success. Wow, that answer was really good. I really like whoever said that. That was an excellent answer. It's in my set of answers, but I like the fact that this person stressed that. I think it was mostly one person that really insisted on this concept. Um, there were a number of people talking about the fact that profit is even important for non-profit organization because it gives you more resources in order to grow your non-profit organization. So that's also very important to notice that it's not just a for-profit matter to care about profit. It's every business, so that way you can be sustainable. It's this long-term life longevity that you're looking for. And so I think I wanted to take some time to talk about this because I wanted to make sure everyone again see that these are important concepts.
I think,
Yeah.
can I add something about this?
Yes,
I think I kind of related it now that I understand copyright, that it also, profit also is a reward for even doing the work. Nobody wants to do work and not get paid. So,
yeah,
as a buyer, we look at companies and say, "Oh, they're only interested in making money." Duh.
yeah,
That's not their only interest, but as consumers, we tend to feel that way because we don't want to part with our money. But you have to understand the concept of trading time for dollars,
yes,
which is what we do as employees. I don't
yes,
think it's not anybody. I have never met anybody that say, "Oh, I'll come and work for you. You don't have to pay me." That's volunteering.
yes,
And sometimes, because I have a lot of sales experience with home-based businesses, and when I sit down with a person, they're looking for me to discount my product until I educate them
yes,
about my product and I'm able to handle the objective. Then they don't mind praying. And sometimes I have to tell them, um, when I'm training other people, I have to remind them that, this is my job, it's not my ministry. So I didn't come here to give you my time and anything
yeah,
like that. This has to be you have to respect me the way that you want me to respect you
that's right. Yeah,
as
yeah,
as the seller, as the I hear a lot of people say that about doctors or big pharma. That's
yeah,
one of, oh, they only want um to make money. Well, okay, I get it. I get it. They can be greedy. However, if you were in an accident, you would not want someone to take you to a holistic doctor that's just going to pray over you and give you some garlic. You would want them to take you to a orthopedic surgeon or a plastic surgeon or some kind of doctor to help Me and you back together because you don't have no leg no more. You don't have side, your face is gone. So you have to respect the knowledge that people come to you with. And it's not always about, you have to, oh, yeah, well, in that case, yeah, I want a doctor. Okay, well, you still want a doctor just for a general checkup, just for somebody to draw your blood and tell you what's going on inside your body because you can't see. We don't
Yeah.
know what's going on. We don't know if we're walking around with cancer or diabetes or hypertension. We just walking around. So, yeah, profit is really important. Really important.
Yeah, it's very important. And also, you bring the matter about how much profit is too much profit. And therefore, sometimes that's what makes it very difficult. And in the medical world, obviously, became very complicated because the doctors themselves are, in terms of the percentage of profits that they're making today, it's much less than yesterday. It's much less than 20 years ago. It's much less than 30 years ago, because the volume of profit within medicine has shifted towards the insurances, has shifted towards the pharmaceutical cost of the product, has shifted towards the administration of the people that run the business of health, and not so much of the nurses and the doctors. And that becomes a very big problem because those people have to work faster. They have to see more patients within the time that they used to see two patients. Now they have to see 3.8 patients, and to increase the profit. But for the benefit of the customers, that's a different story because they're getting less time with the doctors. But all of this concept of profit is important because you do have to make some profit, but you have to think about what's too much profit, and then it's sort of creating a situation where you also opening the door for competitors because you're making so much profit. And then the competitors can sell for less than you selling it because you had so much profit that
Yeah.
now there's room for many others. And sometimes those many others may be coming from overseas because they're going to be, a knockoff type of product that will create the profit. So this concept of profit is a concept of timing. When is it the time to make more, the time to make less? There's many issues. So we'll be talking about pricing next week, and we'll talk more about the depth of the perspective behind profit. But thank you for bringing this up. Um, this is an important subject, and that's also that's a very difficult. I, of the four P's, marketing is the four P's. Of the four P's, the pricing is probably the most difficult subject because it has to do with the profit. It has to do with the investors. When you have investors, you have to talk about in terms of profit. So this concept of investor is not something you're going to spend much time in this particular class, but it's something that you will spend much more time in the entrepreneurship class because thinking about investors is a central subject within entrepreneurship and not so much within marketing. So we'll go back to this together at some different stages. To to move on from this, I want to go back to something that's very important because I keep nailing, really addressing it many times. I received an email yesterday. I was trying to address it with one of the students saying, you need to really go back to opportunities. They are not ideas, and opportunities are facts in your environment. And then I use an analogy, and this was with Christine. I was using this analogy of the architecture, and I don't know if it made sense. Did it make sense for you, Christine?
Yeah, I did think it was a very interesting analogy that I will definitely share with my group
Okay,
of the
great.
architects and the different,
Yeah.
not geology, geographic examples that you gave. So thank you.
So what I'll do is I'll share it with the class because I, I said that just to you, and then I realized, wow, I wonder if that's a good example because I've never used it before, and it made a lot of sense the more I was thinking of it. So I just want to share it with the class today. Imagine this class was a class about architecture, and therefore you had to come up with a nice home design, a nice house design, and let's say we had seven groups, and the seven groups, each group came up with a different design, one of the one on the screen right now. Then I would have to judge those designs. But the reality is, I cannot judge those designs unless I know where that house is going to be. So, is the house in Japan? Is the house in, I don't know, India? Is the house in Greenland? Isn't the house on a piece of land that is flat? Is the house in somewhere it's hot? Is the house where it's close to the water, there's wind? I mean, what are the land structure in order to define what the house needs to be? Because there's cultural aspects, there's weather aspects, there's, you know, historical aspects. There's so many other aspects that need to be taken into configuration. So if you want, the opportunity is the land. If we know what is the opportunity, we can come up with what the house needs to look like. That's the strategies. And then we can come up with the details. You know, do we have a fountain? Do we have loan? Is it a real loan? Is it a fake loan? Is there a swimming pool? How many bathrooms? How many bedrooms? How many beds? How many lamps? How many bulbs? All the bulbs in the houses, that's a tactic. But how many story you have, that may be strategic. So the big elements are strategic, the tiny elements are tactical. But where is the house going to be built is the opportunity. So hopefully, I think it worked for Christine, and I'm thinking it's working for me to if I didn't know what it was. And I'm just hoping that this analogy will be also helpful to you in the sense of opportunities is the land, the strategy is the style of house, and the tactics is how many beds, for example, the details in order to design that home.
Okay,
Okay.
so my question is, if this was a SWOT opportunity, it would say something like, it would give the acreage and where the land was located.
Yeah, it would be exactly you know, like how do they have it? A GPS code.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will be a GPS code, and we'll know exactly from which corner to what corner. We'll have the topography. You know, it will be like a scan of the topography. We'll have the type of gravels, the inclination, where it's flat, where it's not flat. If there is a rock in one area that you have, can you break the rock? Can we switch the design so we can have a pool where there's no rocks? And you see what I'm saying? So knowing the piece of land at a depth of, I don't know, 10 feet is what you want. Is you want this real understanding of the market, the different choices, and then a total understanding of the opportunity that you're going to go after. And now, going back to you, is what is the most important source and the most important opportunity in general? I don't have the target there, the micro and the macro environment. Usually I have the picture of the target, but I don't think I have it. No, not today. So it's inside the target. But what is the factor that is the most important source of opportunities? And that question on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the most difficult, is one. Very easy. What is the number one source of opportunity?
The number one source
Yes.
is the strength of the company.
No.
No.
The number one source is the customer.
Ah, that was a trick question.
There is, yeah. So the number one source is the customer. And therefore, if you, I'm guessing you're looking for opportunities. If you're looking for opportunities, the number one, and you know, that was my conclusion with every group on Saturday, just so you know. I concluded with your group, but I concluded with all the groups. Is you are looking for opportunities, everybody's in the same boat, so you have to identify opportunities and come up with good opportunities. The problem is to find opportunities that are strategic versus the opportunity that are tactical. But the number one source of opportunities are the customers. Okay, so the customers will be what will bring you the best opportunities. Today we're gonna have a hardcore presenting, and they will tell us about the opportunities. We'll make sure everybody understands what they are. Hopefully, they will present it. I've talked at least once, maybe twice about our goal, what was the opportunity, and all that. I've done it before, but let me do one for the um, for another client, which will be presented the week after, so the 25th, which is called Richie, Alex Ritchie. So before I do this, I want to um, I want to look at the STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So I briefly talked about this last Wednesday, but I really talk about it very quick. So I just want to go back very quickly as well. Segmenting means dividing. So you break the people into small segments, small characteristics. Targeting means grouping these characteristics, and positioning is coming up with an image. So what are the characteristics you use? You use culture, which culture the people belong to, like the language they may have, the ethnicity they may have, the religion they may have. That's the culture. And then you also have subcultures. So subcultures in the music industry is very famous, like rock and roll, electronic music, pop, um, classical music, country music. If you're someone that's really passionate about those style of music, that may be your subcultures. Social group is what group do you identify yourself with, your family, the type of roles, if you're married, not married, if you have kids, and so forth. Personal is your age. So there's a generation impact. There is the type of jobs that you have, the interests that you have, and the activities that you have, but also concept of your personality. So some people like new things, some people like old things, some people like things only made in America, some people like things made overseas. Some people are always waiting for new things to come and they buy because it's new and they assume it's new is better. So all these personality traits have an impact. But the way people are, what is the element that it has the biggest impact on people making decisions out of all of these? Is it your age? Your age is important. Is your personality? Personality is important. Is it your family? Well, that's the closest one. The biggest element that has the largest impact on anyone's decision on a day to day, minute per minute, not all of them, but most of them, is your culture. So your culture is what has the deepest impact on most of people's decisions. For example, maybe you never had sushi. Let me guess, you're probably not Japanese. Let me guess, if you're Japanese, you had lots of sushi. Maybe you never had a burrito. Let me guess, you're not Mexican. But if you're Mexican, you probably had many burritos. So what I'm trying to say is, if you are, I don't know, if you're from Scotland and someone asks you how many burritos did you have today, that question doesn't probably qualify because in Scotland they never had burritos. So, do they think burritos is good? They probably think burritos are bad. Why do they think they are bad? Well, because they don't know it. Does it mean that because you don't know something that it's bad? Well, it just means, but because you don't know, you don't have an opinion. Because you don't have an opinion, the answer to the question, is it good or bad? You're most likely going to say it's bad. So, culture, in many ways, has a huge impact, and people are more likely to like something that they know than something that they don't. So, that doesn't mean that all of these other characteristics are not important, but it's very important to always remember what's the most important most of the time. Like, what is the out of the 20 characteristics you should look at when you identify opportunities, you should look at the 20, but you should make sure that you know that the customers have the biggest impact. Same thing. When you're looking at the customers, there's many characteristics. Just right here on the screen, there's one, two, three, four. So there's about 10, and of those 10, the most important one is the culture. So it's always important to see the weight of things and not just to see that they all equal weights. There's just some that have a bigger weight. Yes, Ashay, what is your question?
My excuse me, my question is, mm, I'm trying to uh think how to say this. Well, I'll just say it. Culture, ethnicity, and nationality is
Yes.
used interchangeably most of the time, but they're not the same thing. So when you say culture, are you talking ethnicity? Are you talking nationality? Because
Um, well, what happened is culture is a broad term.
Okay.
So the is a broad term that is a set of values associated with certain characteristics, such as sets of values associated with a religion, for example. So, people's religion is what shapes people culture, but also a language is what shapes people culture, but also
Exactly.
ethnicity is what shapes people culture. But sometimes people have also a subculture, so they have like a main language plus a sub language, or a main ethnicity plus a sub ethnicity, or a main religion plus a sub religion. So it's like you are Christian Protestant, or you're Christian Catholic, or you're Christian Episcopal. So you are like, you have a main and then you have like a sub elements. And so American, and then it could be Asian American. So you have a culture and a subculture.
So in marketing, how deep do you have to dive in that?
Okay, so thank you very much for your question, because that's the whole idea is that the deeper you dive, the smaller the group of people that you will focus on.
Okay.
So it's like if I say I want American, Asian American, then I want them to be, I don't know, I'm trying to find something, maybe Jewish, that'll be rare. And the more you add Asian American Jewish, for example, these three characteristics of segmentation, each one of these is a segment characteristics, makes,
Oh, I'm sorry.
makes the potential target very small. So the more you add segments, the smaller it makes it possible. So let me give you another example that is absolutely obnoxious, but for the sake of everyone to understand. So let's say I say I want to sell a product to women. Then I want to sell a product to women that are over 40 years old. Then I want to sell a product to women that are over 40 years old that live in Santa Monica and that are pregnant and play badminton. So you see what I'm saying? And then you could be even more obnoxious. I play badminton 5 days a week. So the more characteristics you add to dividing your segment, the more you micro-segment. And the more you micro-segment, the more likely that you will be better at satisfying this person. Imagine you go to a restaurant and you go there at 5 o'clock when they open. And the minute you go at 5 o'clock, the minute you walk inside, they close the restaurant and they say, tonight, we will cook just for you. How likely you will be satisfied? Very likely. But that restaurant will not be making a profit because this will be just one customer. So it's the idea of segmentation. Segmentation is a very powerful tool because it allows you to understand the customers and specifically serve the customers. Obviously, if you go to a restaurant at 5 o'clock and they close the restaurant for the next 4 hours just for you to cook just for you, it is very likely that they will ask you the question is, what do you want? Anything you want, we probably can do it because you are the only customer. And they will therefore do something extremely special and exactly what you like in the exact way that you like it. So it's not going to be the way the chef wants to do it, but it's the way that they will focus just on you, maybe based on what the chef wants to do and based on what you want. Maybe a combination there. But the idea of micro segmenting is the idea of increasing potential satisfaction. So now, just to be obnoxious, we have 21. I thought I was already obnoxious enough, but I'm going to keep doing this. Imagine we have 21 students, and then I said, you know what? I'm going to give a class to each one of you independently. So enough having me as one professor for 21 students is I will have 21 lecture per week for each student. And therefore I will go and in the pace of each one of the students, making sure each one of the students is getting exactly the custom instruction for the material. Custom instruction for the material, one would expect that I would ask you questions. Have you done marketing? There was um, a student Um, I think so. Yes, there was a student here. Let me see, Suzanne, I think it was. She responded to the open-ended questions using some of her own experience in marketing based on the fact that she, I believe, was a marketing student prior to today. And so she used example that she learned in another class, in her marketing classes a while back, right? And so it, for me, is it correct, Suzanne? I'm just guessing.
Yeah, you're right. I did a marketing like project, and what we did was we had to create a business in a saturated like market. And the
Yes,
category that we were assigned in was coffee shops, which was
yes,
really difficult because everybody drinks coffee.
yeah,
But the problem was like we were trying to aim specifically to coffee drinkers because Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts is considered fast food now. It's not a coffee shop.
that's
So
right.
if you're a coffee drinker like and you say, "Oh, my favorite coffee is Starbucks," that's no, you're not a coffee drinker. You love fast food. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Very interesting. So that was the comment you are making. And so what I'm trying to say is if I was to teach each student independently, and for example, I'm using you, Suzanne, because you've done marketing before, I would assess and research on each student on their prior experience with marketing in order to customize my instruction for each of the students in a different way. Susan having done marketing before, it would be different than someone that never did marketing before. Does that make sense? So that's the idea of microsegmentation is the more you go into the brain, the more you put your feet in the shoes of that customers, the better you become to serve them. But the problem is if the more you do one-on-one, the more they're gonna have to pay a higher price for receiving the product or the service. So you have to find a balance here, which is what are the characteristics? And here I'm going to try to explain it in a very profound way because this is, in fact, hardcore is going to present in a few very soon. And it's this idea that you have to really identify the perfect match of the customer for what you are strong of. In a way, it's the same thing if you're doing sport. I mean, if you're 7 feet, you should not be a horse jockey, right? Or probably not be a gymnast. If you're 7 feet, you probably should be in volleyball, basketball, something like this. And so you try to match your strength with the needs in the market. And if you say, you know what, but I want to do sport, but I want to become rich fast. So therefore you give away volleyball. You don't get rich fast playing volleyball, but you get rich fast playing basketball. So you will go for basketball for the rationale of the fact that you will be making money. You don't make much money for volleyball. And so it is important to see all the criteria and maximize. You're like a optimizer, like a computer that's going to try to take all of these customers, all of these characteristics, and then targeting means that you group those characteristics. The purpose of grouping the characteristics is the purpose of creating the personas. So the two groups I've presented, Maris and Lottie, and some of you last Saturday already have started to do this, is you creating those persona, which is essentially your target. And you explain who are these people in these personas and all this. What's very important is you cannot tell me who are the personas, meaning who are the customers, unless you tell me what is the opportunity that you're going after. So um, you have to define the opportunity before you can define who would be the customers. But these are standard personas. And so doing segmentation and targeting is something we do on a daily life. So I was just trying to think about some examples. How to spot a rich guy, right? How to spot a rich guy is, could be the idea. It's like how, well, maybe someone that seems to have money, someone who seems to have a lifestyle, someone who seems to be all of these. So we all do this. We try to guess people. We try to estimate people. And so estimating people are intelligent, poor, rich, all these different things is normal one. Another one you may do is how do you estimate someone is a bad driver? I mean, uh, among other crazy things that I do is I ride motorcycle, for example. And so if you want to survive in Southern California riding a motorcycle, you have probably have to be pretty good at estimating people who are driving in front of you. You know, the position of their head, the position of their hands on the steering wheel, because it says a lot. It, you know, if they drive straight, or if they have a tendency to go left, right, left, right, left, right, are they on their cell phone? You know, are they paying attention? And so, driving motorcycle is a lot to do about surviving and survival skills, defensive driving. But anyway,
What if their
so
car has dents in it? That's dents.
yeah, yes. Oh, yeah. You see a car that's dense, or a car that's smoke, or a car that paint is peeling. I mean, that's someone that doesn't look like they are really careful, I suppose, right? It's most likely not someone rich, right? You would, you would mean, you probably guess as well. But I, I do this thing. I'm just being honest. I do look at things and make some assumptions. I can't be the only one in the Zoom meeting doing this tonight. Everybody does this. If that's what you do, you're naturally doing segmentation targeting. So the skill of segmentation targeting is something that I think we all do since we are what, 2 years old, a year out, 3 years old. I mean, if you've been kind of slow, let's say 6 years old, but so which means you've done it for a long time. So we are pretty much somewhat experts in different fields in guessing, you know, those kind of things. So it's very important to see that dividing people, organizing people is normal, and it's necessary because you cannot be everything to everyone, and therefore you have to pick specific customers. So the rule for picking customers are pretty simple. If you sell the product to everyone, it's undifferentiated, and this is rare. Selling one product and that works for everybody does not really exist that much. So I'm going to say it's less than 1% of the time. 99% of the time, what you do is you sell a product to a group of personas. So you identify the personas to be different and you sell it to a group of personas. If you sell it to one single persona, one product for one persona, it's called differentiated. One product for a group of persona or targets, it's called concentrated. So you have to remember this because that's a key component of marketing. And I'm trying to make the logic of if you want to succeed, you have to have opportunities. The best opportunities are the customers, and the best customers are the one that you've done a good job at segmenting and targeting. So that's the logic of today's class. And
Can
that's what
you
I'm,
can you repeat that? Sorry,
yes,
the difference between the concentrated and differentiated marketing
yes, I
one more
will.
time.
Yes. So concentrated is when you sell one product to a set of targets that you've identified versus differentiated is when you sell the product to one specific target. Concentrated is multiple targets. Differentiated is just one target. So I'm going to give you a simple example that I think everybody will know. So let's say you have a group of customers. They say, I'm going to use toothpaste so we can all relate to it. I know it's, and then you may even remember it when it's the right time. So toothpaste, if you think about why people buy toothpaste, is you have the people that buy it because they want good breath. Other people is buying it because they want white teeth. Another group of people is they buy toothpaste because they don't want cavities. So then you say, gee, I'm gonna make one product which is whitening teeth, and this product is gonna be called I don't know, tea white toothpaste. So tea white toothpaste is the teeth whitening toothpaste by Procter& and Gamble. That would be differentiated because it's one group of customers, one product. But then I said, you know what? The one that want cavity and good breath, I think I can combine them together by making a toothpaste which can have two colors, one blue and one red. And I will tell them I will use a dye, a very bad dye that gives you cancer. Uh, and I will say the red dye is for the cavity and the blue dye is for the breath. Because I would have done some market research and I would have seen that people associate those colors with the result. If I if they think, oh, blue, that's gonna be nice for your breath or whatever. So I'll pick that color, I will dye it, and then I would put in the toothpaste, and I would say, this toothpaste does those two things. And I will mention those two things, and because I will know that I don't need to make one specific toothpaste for each group, that I can be good enough by making a toothpaste that do both. Now, if suddenly the market, the competitors responds by creating a toothpaste that is only doing breath and then a toothpaste that only does cavity, what does it do? It's possible that this will take my market share. So what I do is I respond by having a lower price, which is a lower price for a product that do two things. So people will see more value because they'll say it's a product that does both. However, my competitors may be very smart and convince and manipulate, Milgram manipulate, Bernie's manipulate my customers by convincing them that their product is much better because it only does one thing. And they tell you, we're not trying to be everything, we're trying to be one thing. And that one thing that we do it better than anybody else. And then people will go, "Ooh, I really need cavity." And the other person would say, "Ooh, I really need breath. The breath is really my biggest problem." So then they will buy the product that are the most differentiated. So you have to look in the market, how competitive it is, how discerning are the customers, and how important is that characteristic. Can they be combined together? Combining is great because you make less products and you get more customers. Differentiating is great because you increase satisfaction because you make one specific product for one type of customers, but then you have to make many more type of products in order to satisfy everyone, and therefore it's a lot of inventory and a lot of production, a lot of marketing for these different products. They may be under the same brand, but they may be different brands, so that way you can build different brand specialty for different purposes. Okay? So hopefully you understand all of these facets that are like the life of everyone who is listening to me, because these are the products that are in the world surrounding us, right? Um, let's look at a simple example of something happening in Los Angeles. So I met this gentleman um, while I was doing sales and representation for my cognac brand, and someone told me you need to meet him, and I was like, well, that's kind of not something really that I do when I go to a specific retailer of liquor and to sell the products. They say yes, but he's really smart. He's very different because he came up with an idea. So he came from Syria. He had almost no money. He had to escape Syria for all the reasons that you can imagine. And he came to the United States. He got just enough money and support from his community to get this liquor store, one of the 8,000 liquor store in Los Angeles. So what do you do, like Susan was saying, what do you do when you have sell the same product as everybody else, and you have the same store like everybody else, and you're just one of the thousand that do the same thing? Well, he was very smart. He's analyzed his location. So I'm going to zoom to his location, and his location is called La Bodega, the retail store there. And what he found is that his store was the exit to go to Lake Arrowhead. And so people to go to Lake Arrowhead, they exit, drive in front of his store, and then drive to Lake Arrowhead, Running Springs, and Big Bear, the ski resorts and all this. They do this during the summer, during the winter, and so forth. So then, instead of keeping the same liquor store, he did some research and tried to identify what are the products that people want to buy when the type of people that go to those destinations. Most of the people go to this destination are people with a little bit more money than the usual person because it's expensive to go to the mountains for the winter sports and so forth. And he started putting better products in his liquor store. Instead of having the same product that everybody else has, he put more premium luxury craft beer, more premium luxury wine, more premium luxury spirits, and so forth. And in a matter of a few months, he became one of the most profitable liquor store in Los Angeles, to the point that even though he was a recent immigrant with no money, within a few months he was able to pay and buy everyone who had borrowed money, buy out everyone who had borrowed money. Why did he do this? Because he did segmentation and targeting. Did he even know did segmentation and targeting? No, he didn't. Why? Well, he was an accountant when he was in Syria. So he had a good sense of money and just a good common sense, which he used for his business. And when I met him, he was actually selling my cognac, quite a lot of my cognac. And he heard about me that I was in LA. He says, "Oh, it'll be fun to meet with this guy." And I said, "It would be fun to meet with him." So I met with him. And as I was meeting with him, I said, "You know why you're so successful?" I said, "Because you do segmentation, targeting, and positioning." And he asked me, "What the heck is that?" I said, "I happen to also be a professor. So let me explain what you're exactly doing. And let me tell you the details of the things you're doing and what you probably want to do next." And so at that time, even though we are very different people, we really had a great conversation, and it was very we eventually felt like we knew each other for a long time, but we didn't because we understood each other. And he asked me a question and I answered. He was very smart. But anyhow, this is exactly what segmentation, targeting, and positioning is. Here is Cindric. Austin Cindric, he won Daytona 500. He's one of the most famous racer. He's in the most prestigious team in the United States of America called Penske Racing Team, and he races those kind of cars. If I had to tell you what kind of car do you think he drives on a daily basis, you probably say this car, and that's what he drives. He drives a nice sports car, which is sponsored by the different brands that he's car driving and so forth. What's interesting is that he also owns, if you look at his social media, a brick. A brick is a Volvo 240 station wagon. And so then you would go, people are multifaceted. It's like an onion. And that's what you're trying to do is you're trying to break the onion of people to understand the different interests that they have, the different facets of their personality, to not put them into all the boxes, but the boxes which are the most important for whatever they're going to be buying and the different experience, the different interests they have in life. So in the music industry, it's the same. Is they just and they're evolving. They may be more into this music genre at one time and more into that music genre in another time. They evolve, they migrate, they come back, they move away and never come back. So all of this is very important. When you're looking at an artist, you have to really understand this. What I would like to do now is jump into the presentation from Bernice at this time. Can we have the Bernice group come and present?
All right, so good evening, everyone. Tonight, our team will be presenting on Edward L. Bernays, along with his theories, his influential books, and how it applies to our lives today while providing real life examples. So let's dive into it. So, who is Edward L. Bernays? Well, he's known as the father of public relations who utilized psychology and sociology to shape public opinions. A couple fun facts about him include that he's related to Sigmund Freud. So, as his nephew, Bernays applied psychoanalytic theories to advertising campaigns. And later in the presentation, we'll discuss what this looks like. We found it so interesting that he's the one that made bacon and eggs for an all-American breakfast. Like he made it like a thing. And so basically what he did was like he surveyed 5,000 doctors, urging them to endorse a hearty breakfast to boost energy. And he promoted like this through like medical findings in newspapers and successfully rebranding bacon as a morning staple. And next, I'll discuss his theories. So we like to think that our choices and what we buy, who we vote for, etc., are entirely our own. But Bernays believed that a small group of people could engineer our choices without us even knowing it. And he called this the engineering of consent. And Bernie's believed people are driven by their unconsciousness, desires, not logic. In other words, don't sell the product, but sell the feeling. So, for example, if I were to sell a car to you, I wouldn't list the mechanic and like I wouldn't say like, oh, this engine is X, Y, and Z. I would sell it by suggesting that it would make you look more powerful or more adventurous, that you really need this product, and if you don't get it, you'll be very unhappy. And he changed the perception and the name of propaganda and later rebranded it as we know, public relations, because the word became negative and bad. And like from the previous section, Bernays would hire experts, doctors, scientists to back up his claims. So it would be more believable. An example of today is when you see those commercials are like, oh, 9 out of 10 doctors approve this product, or like 9 out of 10 of dermatologists would recommend this product for your skin. And now I'm going to pass it on to Alex, who will discuss more about the books he's written about his theories.
Great, thanks, Susan. So one of the earlier books that he kind of wrote that kind of caught our attention here was Crystallizing Public Opinion. In this particular book, Brene discusses public relations, the role as more as a pressing agent, someone who can actually create useful symbolic linkage among the masses. And in this case, he argues that public opinion is not fixed, not purely rational, not formally individual. He took this initiative and argued that opinions are formed through media framing, influential leaders, emotional triggers, and social groups. With this, he believes that crystallizing, quote, this frames it as allowing scattered public attitudes and opinions into a clear, more unifying viewpoints. He really believed, and this also will tie in with propaganda, that the role of a public relations before was not viewed in the most positive light, often viewed as more manipulative and kind of unprofessional, since corporations back then focused more on just productions and sales and not really how to come across a certain message with certain companies. So he defines this PR professional role and utilize this information to help persuade others to align public opinion with a specific cause. He also argues that that companies need to understand the perceptions of public attitudes to adapt messaging to social values and within culture and manage their reputation continuously throughout their but also at the same time they have to realize companies have having a huge public perception was a huge major assets to them. This book also itself allows for politicians to realize that, hey, winning isn't about just setting policies, but it's also about shaping public mood and how media strategies, how to convey this messaging. And with this, it's so important to influence the masses. And as he says, the masses are influenced by a small group of respectable leaders. This really kind of gave the groundwork and the foundation for how we would view public relations roles in other future companies and any position of leadership going forward. A lot of politicians and or people within positions of power really refer to this book in terms for their business. Now, on the polar opposite end, in his more controversial book, Propaganda, that came out in 1928, Bernays kind of argues that propaganda is like a necessary tool for organizing society, explaining how a small, invisible, quote, government of elites manipulate public opinion through psychology and mass media to guide behaviors in politics, behavior, and culture. So what does this mean? So Bernays basically, again, had this idea that only a skilled minority can and only should shape the views of the irrational, which is like the public. He also believed that public opinion can be managed, right? Can be actively managed, but not passively observed. So how he does this, as Susan was mentioning before, is through engineering consent, sort of guiding behavior. And he believed this was the ultimate decision for this. It introduced techniques such as manufacturing news and events, creating kind of these like tangible, newsworthy occurrences to like really capture attention and deliver message like indirectly and while slowly ingraining into your subconscious. While borrowing these ideas from his uncle, Sigmund Freud, he often thinks about not arguing with the public, but rather how do you create emotional environments that kind of shape their way of thinking. So he argues that this is very necessary for stabilizing democracy, driving capitalist consumption, and controlling political and social agenda. But he also writes that I thought was interesting that manipulation isn't necessarily evil, but it is necessary without coordination. Public opinion wouldn't be as stable. And this kind of blurred the lines between what is persuasion and deception, real or fake news, but is it ethical or not? Um, and this question I thought about with my group was, is persuasion a normal part of leadership or is it a thought of freedom itself? Those are just a few examples of kind of the books that kind of really influenced how political leaders, CEOs of companies, marketers, any person in a position of power would borrow from these ideologies to implement them in their business and our practices. But I'm going to pass it over to Justin to talk a little bit more about examples of how these were used.
Great. Thank you, Alex. So, to better understand a lot of these concepts, we're going to go through some of the examples of Bernays' campaigns from back then. So, to get started, we'll go with one of his more silly uh, campaigns. I'll call it the Torches of Freedom campaign from 1929. So basically, the point of this campaign was to normalize women smoking in public, as around the time it was still kind of taboo for women to be smoking outside alongside their like male counterparts. And the Lucky Strike company of cigarettes had reached out to Bernays because they had realized that there was an opportunity to market their cigarettes to women, an audience that wasn't buying their cigarettes as much. And so what Bernays did was take this and really flip it into this this feminist idea, right? Basically, the whole campaign centered around this a moment in which on an Easter Day parade in New York, a bunch of women would be walking throughout the streets while smoking Lucky Day cigarettes. And anytime any reporters or journalists were to ask them, "Oh, like what are you doing?" Basically, they were to say, "Oh, we're making a stand, you know, down with the patriarchy. We women too can smoke outside." And this was photographed, put in newspapers, and nationwide, you know, the Lucky Strikes cigarettes began to sell a lot more. The next example Susan kind of talked about earlier would be like the All American Breakfast. Basically, there's a company that, ironically enough, was not bringing home the bacon in terms of their bacon sales. And so Bernays ended up going to a bunch of physicians saying, "Hey, so like, how can we change? Or what is the healthy breakfast? What would a healthy breakfast look like?" And when these people said protein, lots of protein, hearty, full, this got published, these physicians signed, and now we have the All American Breakfast that we know of. And then the last campaign that we'll talk about, or at least right now, is going to be the Procter and Gamble Ivory Soap campaign, which was basically meant to boost the sales of Ivory soap bars, which were just, you know, basic old white soap bars. Um, Bernays saw that there was an opportunity to market towards children because at the time he had made this connection that children didn't really find enjoyment in bath time. And as he said, soap was the enemy of children. And so to combat this, he created these national soap sculpture competitions, these contests for kids around the nation, primarily in New York, though, to create sculptures with the soap, you know, to give them a better association with the actual product, you know, make it something fun, make it something that the kids are actually going to enjoy. And by doing so, he was able to create this positive relationship with the brand, allowing for the brand to increase in sales. Additionally, he also positioned Ivory as medically trusted, as he would go and survey hospitals as to what type of soap they preferred. And when they said, you know, white, scent free, it was just, you know, it was a done deal. Okay. Now, moving forward, we're going to be talking about his political campaigns as well, because he didn't just work within products. Now, another, in my opinion, a bit of a silly campaign would be the Calvin Coolidge Stars Breakfast. So in 1924, Calvin Coolidge was running for the presidency for his second term. And basically, the perception that he had with the American people at the time was that he was very cold, very calculating, very unfeeling. And so his team wanted to kind of remedy that image and make him appear more warm and hospitable and sympathetic. And so Bernays developed this Stars Breakfast in which a bunch of celebrities, primarily actors, would come to the White House and eat breakfast with Calvin Coolidge. There was reporters there, you know, taking pictures, journalists talking about like what was talked about. And, you know, Calvin Coolidge did go on to win the next election. I'm not saying that it was primarily because of this, but we could theorize that this may have helped. And then the last campaign that we'll talk about is actually Bernays and his influence in the coup of Guatemala in 1954. So this section is going to be a little history heavy, so just bear with me. But basically, in the early 1940s, Guatemala was under a dictatorship in which a lot of laborers did not have a lot of rights. And so that was very beneficial for a specific company, being the United Fruit Company in the United States. This company got their fruit, primarily bananas, from Guatemala using very exploitative labor practices. But in 1944, the Guatemalan people overthrew their government and had elected a democratic president for the very first time. And when that president was instated, one of the very one of his very big platforms was making sure that employees and workers had rights and they could defend themselves. And so, with that, being the status quo at the time, a lot of the laborers for these fruit farms started going on strike. And so initially, the UFC had brought in Bernays to figure out how to better sell their bananas, just like typically. And then all of this happened. And so they had to shift as to like, how do we get the people who are, developing our product to continue doing so. And so Bernays ends up uh, framing this as like a communist situation in Guatemala, framing the revolution and framing the president as a really bad thing for the American people. Also, that enough Americans could really push for intervention of the U.S. into Guatemala, which ended up happening in 1954 when the U.S. ends up invading Guatemala through like secret means, and replace the president there. And so all of these examples really portray Bernays' exploitation of the unconscious and really his impact and his mastery of understanding how public relations, public information can get people to really like mobilize. And so moving forward, I'm going to pass it to Char to talk about some modern examples.
Thanks, Justin, for those examples. I'm going to dive into some modern examples. And this is a picture of Bernays from the documentary The Century of Self, which is 4 hours long. And I do highly recommend it. You learn a lot of information about Bernays, propaganda, and public relations. Now, this is Bernays' words. Propaganda began to be a bad word because of the Germans using it. So, what I did was try to find some other words. So, we found the words Council on Public Relations. And so with that, Ed Bernays was engineering this concept of engineering of consent was given to a role. And in modern times, we could look at the biggest PR firms like Edelman, who represents Microsoft, Starbucks, Shell, Samsung, some of the biggest companies. And CAA is a talent agency that reps some of the biggest actors and musicians and talents. So they very much have a heavy PR component to their company, and they represent people like Ariana Grande, Will Smith, George Clooney, Scarlett Johansson, the biggest stars in Hollywood. And Weber Shandwick is a PR firm that represents household brand names like Dove Chocolate, McDonald's, and IKEA. So furthermore, we'll go into some more examples of modern day examples of the concepts and how engineering of consent is used in the market today. One of the examples, if you remember from 2022, was the pink sauce. It was a viral trend. It was a sauce that was pink, and people would yes, I'll put the link to the Bernie's documentary in the chat after we're done presenting so everyone could watch that. So the trend of viral pink sauce relates to Bernie's, like with the soap concept of engineering that he would package green packaging and that competition that he hosted. So he would put on like some almost in essentially like pop-ups and brand activations for social media. Is an example of engineering consent is also, trust and data. Susan talked about it. He got 5,000 people to highlight the American breakfast. Well, dentists are doing that today. This data comes bias. The companies are hiring and getting that data themselves, so it's coming in at a bias rate. The pharmaceutical companies do the same. The idea of trusting authority and giving your consent because of a authoritative figure that's supposedly an expert in that field that you're considering. Also, influencer marketing is a big thing. Kind of like with the females smoking and being like symbols of freedom. Influencer marketing is similar, whereas influencer with a following, with an audience, with a brand can carry that over to a different medium, a different brand. The Charlie drink was a successful example of an influencer marketing campaign. Charlie D'Amelio promoted her viral Charlie drink with Dunkin' Donuts on TikTok, and it drove 45% increase in cold brew sales and a 57% rise in app downloads upon activating that. So all in all, Bernays' concept of engineering of consent is being used today, and there's a lot of examples that we could pull from in the marketplace. So now I'm going to pass it off to Caitlin.
Thanks, Char. So I'm going to give some examples with music. So music is one of the most effective tools for shaping public opinion, which is why it fits closely with Bernie's ideas. So on social media, viral songs like DTMF by Bad Bunny are reused across edits, um, like with movies, characters, or even like simple photo slideshows, like especially after the Super Bowl, since he performed there. And the visuals change, but the song always stays the same. So through repetition, the song becomes familiar and emotionally flexible, attaching itself to whatever feeling or identity is trending. Soundtracks in film and TV work the same way. So, for example, Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, which was a 1980s track, was featured in Stranger Things for a season. So that exposure sent it back to the Billboard Hot 100, peaking number 3, 37 years after its release. And it continued appearing in the fifth season. And in December 2025 alone, it earned over 21 million US streams. So this repeated placement, paired with emotional scenes, created strong associations with the song. And jingles are also another obvious example, like short, repetitive audio cues. They're designed to stick in your mind instantly. So, like with McDonald's, like ba da 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 da, or like Netflix's da dum. Like it's basically ingrained in our minds that jingle is associated with that company. They're short, catchy, and repetitive. So, in all these cases, music isn't just only entertainment, it could shape what feels relevant, meaningful, guiding behavior, a modern version of Bernie's engineered consent. So, does this affect us? So, yes, this is affecting us in many areas, not just only in commercials, traditional advertising. This includes social media, games, retail music, lifestyle trends, and they're all designed to influence what we think, what we feel, and what we buy. So algorithms decide what content we see, which ideas go viral, and which behaviors feel normal. So repeated exposure to these messages reinforces opinions, making certain products, brands, or lifestyles feeling familiar and desirable. And also, gaming also plays a role. So in-game items like skins or rewards, they subtly shape players' preferences. On top of that, seeing peers adopt to these trends adds social pressure. And product placements in movies, streaming shows, and influencer content, which Char talked about, all works in a similar way, advertising that feels natural, trustworthy, and part of everyday culture. So altogether, these digital and real world systems guide our choices, beliefs, and desires without us realizing it. And influence is everywhere, and we're living in a world where opinions, habits, and even identities are constantly being shaped, guiding behavior. And this is a modern interactive version of Brené's concept of engineered consent. So, here are resources, and thank you for listening.
Well, fantastic job. Thank you, group. This was well done. I think there was a lot of passion in this presentation, so that's great. It made it so much better. Um, I think, you maybe you've learned something from Bernice. You just want to use it for the good. That's the thing. It's almost like a martial art
Mm,
type of thing. Is don't use it to do bad things,
right.
but it's powerful, and he had a lot of students, obviously, Bernice, and one of them came up with a theory which is not called engineering consent. It's called manufacturing consent. Anyone knows who is the author of manufacturing consent?
Noam Chomsky.
Yes, Noam Chomsky, exactly. So Noam Chomsky is sort of the not the current Bernice because he's very old. He's like 95, so he's still alive. It doesn't get as many views on YouTube, but the beauty is it still exists. So you can go, I would guess, right now on YouTube, and you probably could see a Noam Chomsky video that was done just a few days ago, even maybe. And because he's old, he mumbles a lot, and he's also kind of scary, in some way, because he comes up with all of these manipulation, and some people will call him a conspirationist as well, because people that don't agree with him, that's how they're going to call him. Conspirationist was a name that was given and engineered by the CIA essentially in the 60s, um, at the time where people were saying that JFK was not killed by some people, but he was killed because there was a assassination, political assassination. So everyone who said that after the Warren investigation was called conspirationist. And this call of conspirationist was a engineering from the CIA in order to push away people from having an opinion anyway. So now obviously we hear a lot of conspirationists, and they sometimes we hear that they're correct. And so therefore the conspirationists are sort of becoming a little bit more mainstream than they used to be. But anyway, Noam Chomsky took Bernays and call it manufacturing consent. So it's interesting, the term. Is it engineering consent or is it manufacturing consent? Could it be a slight difference between the two? There is a slight difference, and Noam Chomsky is another one that I strongly recommend to people who are curious about the world that you live in and the manipulation that you are being served currently for whatever music or anything else that would have a matter to you. But thank you, Charlie, for the link. I've saved it, and I with great pleasure enjoy this documentary, I'm sure. And it's very revealing, And so if you put together Milgram, Schopenhauer, and Bernays, you're probably going to have nightmares. And that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to open people's eyes as much as possible within the short period of time that I get to have their attention. I'm a marketing person, and I'm aware of the power of what I teach, and I teach it to people to an extent that it can be dangerous, but hopefully they use it for the right thing. So I just want to show you some aspects of people that have used it to do the wrong things, and they're still being used. But it's about business, it's about money, and therefore, if there's money, there is interest, there's self-interest, and obviously, why not using something that is useful and powerful and effective in order to get more money? And marketing can do that. Okay. Well, great job. I'm so excited. This cohort has been just tremendous. Um, I'm going to do a few more covering a few more subjects, and then we'll move to ARPcore. We'll finish with ARPcore today because I want to finish in the most beautiful way, hopefully, with the group presenting ARPcore, and for them to come and tell us, the reveal of the opportunity and how this phased out and all this change and so forth. But I'm going to again share my screen and go back to where I was with we were discussing. I would just want to finish with positioning now, but before I'll make a segue on this individual. This individual is a gentleman that went as a student to France, in France, and while he was there, he learned something that was very curious. He learned about making cheese, how to make cheese. Um, Being a Chinese person and learning to make cheese may not seem very unusual to you, but just know that the Chinese people do not eat cheese. I don't even know if they have a name for it. It just doesn't exist. They don't make cheese. They don't eat cheese. It's not part of their culture. And so, because I guess he was someone very curious, he was interested in eating cheese, and he said, I enjoy it. And because he enjoyed it, he was curious to make it, and he started learning to make it. And then when he went back to China, he did all kind of jobs until he decided that maybe he could be making cheese in China. So guess what? He started making cheese in China, and guess what happened? What happened after he started making cheese and selling it to the Chinese people? What do you think happened?
They
Blue
started eating it, and he became really made a real big profit.
Uh, no,
No?
no, but he couldn't sell one. He couldn't give them away. So he
What?
was start. Yeah, he couldn't give them away. The Chinese didn't want to try cheese. And if you told them it's really good, they would say, no, it's not good. Oh, disgusting. I'm sick looking at it. And so he couldn't give them away and all that. And then he almost gave up. And then he started thinking about something. You know what he thought of? Opportunity.
Opportunity.
And
Hmm.
you know what is the biggest opportunity?
In China,
In
as a
as
cheesemaker.
as the biggest opportunity in the micro and macro environment, if you were to look at all the elements, but you had only time for one, which one would you look at? And I said this question in the first 10 minutes of the class.
The customer.
The customer. So then he went back and said, I need an opportunity. I need to look at the customers. So he looked at the customers and what did they find in China? He found a lot of Europeans, lots
Mm.
of Europeans. And what do those Europeans and those Americans like? They like cheese.
They like cheese.
And therefore, what do they find in China? But they find imported cheese. But what's the problem with imported cheese? Cheese doesn't travel the best, and if it does, it's expensive. So then he started making cheese the same way you would in Europe, and he started selling it to the places where he knew there were some non-Chinese people going to. And then what happened? He became a billionaire. It's a true story. Huh? So he's actually, that's why you see him laugh like this. He's now a billionaire. He's the number one maker of cheese in China, and he sells to all the non-Chinese in China. And he was the first one to have this idea and go after this opportunity of selling Chinese-made cheese for non-Chinese because the Chinese don't care. But there's so many other non-Chinese people. And then what's going to happen eventually, the Chinese may start to eat it. Why? Because the Chinese are increasingly going overseas. And when they're overseas, they discover of other cultures, habits, kind of like eating wine and eating champagne, drinking champagne, sorry, and eating cheese and so forth, which when they go back to China, now they can eat their own made cheese and they're very patriotic. And so this guy is printing money because he can't help the money coming in his bank account. Why? Again, it's very simple. Is if you do business based on an idea, you're taking big risks. If you're a Chinese person going to China and you have an idea of making cheese, you probably will fail and go bankrupt. But if you say, I will go there and I will start with the non-Chinese because they're Chinese, don't want to eat it, but eventually my business will grow and I will have the resources, the profit that we'll be making, I will invest it in order to start making tastings and inviting Chinese to eat my product. And that's what he did. But it didn't start that way. He had no business plan and he just thought that if it worked somewhere else, it would work in China. And it didn't. He had to really look at the market and understand that there was a customer. So this is my segue to tell you that it is very, very important to see who you're serving and if you're giving them the right product to who you're serving. It's pretty simple business. Is make the thing that the people you give it to, they care. And if you do, eventually they will start buying the product and your business will grow and then you will make profit and you'll invest in more products that you'll be making in order to sell it to more people. So you start with a differentiated one product, one customer. And then you start making one product for several customers concentrated. And then you start making other products for a single customer. And so you go from one for one and one for many, and one for one and one for many. And you grow, grow, grow. And then you update your products and you keep creating better products. Okay, so this is an important concept of business, which is how you develop your products and how you grow. Now, what is positioning? Positioning is the last one. So, positioning means you're going to create a meaning for your product, for your brand. What does it mean? So most people, what they do is they have an idea and then they care of who is the customer. When in fact it should be who is the customer, and then you create the you define the customer and then you make the product based on who you have the customers. That's why it's STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning. But most people do it PST, which is they create the image and then they try to sell something that they've made, that they have stock of inventory of. But the best way is to do ST, no, it's PSTP, means you come up with an idea, then you look at the customers, then you refine your idea, and then you create the product, and then you sell it to the image that they want. But how do you measure this? Is you do the perception map, which is defined by the consumers. What do the consumer perceive my positioning to be? And the positioning map is the map as defined by the marketers. Here's where I want to be. So let's look at a map very quick, a simple map, and I'm going to use two characteristics of positioning, which are the easiest one to use in order to teach students, which is price and quality. So you have low quality, high quality, low price, high price. And then what you try to do is to, let's say you are the Marriott hotels and you try to have a brand of hotels. It's all the same company, but you need to have try to create a brand of hotels per the type of customers that you're trying to sell to. There's some people they want to pay the lowest price and they just want the minimum services. And then some people they want to get average services and higher prices and so forth. And you create those different brands. These will be for different customers. They will be in different areas, different costs associated with these, with different staff, different training, different branding, and so forth. Okay. So the soap is very minimal in the Fairfield Inn, and then the soap in the Marriott is you have like a scented soap and it's a bigger soap and there's several soaps and so forth. So you'll adapt to each market on what's expected for you to satisfy the different customers based on the positioning of the brand and what's expected for the customer. So positioning is actually very important. Positioning is one of the most complex activity inside marketing because it means that you really understand the customers to the point that you're going to try to create what they perceive is right for them. So that's like the Bernese plus 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 plus. Positioning is Bernese. Positioning is coming up with the emotion, coming up with the value or the perception of the value, which is equal to what people in their psyche are expecting the value to be. It's manipulating them for them to feel better about what they're getting. Okay, so finishing here, the quick transition from this is to go to the uh, the next thing that I want to discuss quite quickly, which is the elements of the product. So it's the first P that I want to discuss. So what is marketing? It's the delivery of customer satisfaction at profit and for long term. What else is marketing? Marketing is the marketing mix. What's the marketing mix? The marketing mix is the four P's. It's made of the P of products, price, promotion, and place. Place means distribution and promotion means communication. I've said this many times, but for the sake of memorization, we use four P's. What's inside the product mix? So inside the product mix, you have the packaging, instructions, warranty, services, colors, attachment, image. All of these is part of this. But first, let's define what's a product. A product is a generic term. So you don't sell a product per se. What you sell is you sell a good, a service, an organization, an ID, people, location. What do you mean? Well, selling an actor, selling a musician, you're selling a person. So person is part of being a product. It's a specific product. A politician is also a product, but it's specifically a person. Now, what if you're selling IKEA? IKEA, you're selling a product, but more specifically, a good. You're selling a table, a chair, a wall fixture, a light bulb, an accessory for your home. These are objects. They are items that you're selling, so it's tangible and it's different than a person. Person is tangible, but it's another one. But another product is an event. So you're selling the Olympic Games, the Super Bowl. That's an event. A concert, that's an event, and that's a product. So product is the generic term, and inside this generic term, there's all of these different specificities. Then IDs is what you could sell as well, like a slogan, like don't drink and drive type of thing. These are IDs. So you can sell these. You know, you can also sell services. So services are different in the sense that they are the opposite of the object. So the opposite of IKEA. So for example, you're selling Delta Airlines, a hairdresser, even a concert, a university, a school, right? All of these are services. FedEx, train, um, Uber, all of these are services and they are products. So the product is the generic terms, the service is the specific terms. What's special about services is the fact that services go from being easier to evaluate and less easy to evaluate from more tangible to less tangible. Why is that? Well, because you have services where you have people being involved to some extent. So it's like if you getting a massage, you can see the producer, the person giving you the massage. If you're going to the bank, you are going to the bank and speaking to a teller. But if you go to the vending machine to get a Coke, or if you go to the automatic teller to get some money, these have less of the co-production from the producer to the consumer. Like if you do go to a concert, you're getting the service, you're getting the event, and you're getting the co-production because you're right here and the person is receiving. So the university is the same thing is you're receiving directly from the person producing it. There is a disadvantages of services is that there is a variation of the quality of the service because it's not produced by a machine. From a teller machine, you usually get this, I mean, higher statistics, everyone will get the same service. The machine doesn't have an emotional reaction depending on who they're serving, which a teller may have because they recognize the clients and so forth. So services have four characteristics. Intangibility means that you cannot store it. Inseparability means that there is someone providing the service and it's produced at the same time as it's consumed. You go to Disneyland, you're getting the service of Disneyland while you're at Disneyland. I mean, 2 days after you went to Disneyland, you may have pictures, you may have a toy that you bought for your kids or something, but you may have a t-shirt, but the t-shirt was a tangibilization of the service. The service is really the entertainment that you will get at Disneyland. Variability is the fact that it's produced at the same time and people are usually involved, so therefore people are not as reliable. And then perishability, it means that if you a lot of services become obsolete. I mean, the basic examples are hotel rooms. Right now, there's lots of hotel rooms. There's nobody inside. There's a lot of seats in Uber places, taxi drivers, airplanes that don't have anyone. Therefore, that's why it's important to statistically understand the time where there's more demand and less demand and try to give discounts in lower demand times in order to take advantage of empty space that you can sell for a lower price. So services are different for their nature compared to object. Now, when you sell a product, is you have a like an onion shape, which goes from the core, which is the main reason why you sell the product. So the core of CSUN is you selling a specific degree, a bachelor of physics, a bachelor of music, a bachelor of engineering, a bachelor of business, and so forth. So that's the core is the specific knowledge that you will get, the degree that you will get. Then you have the actual. So the actual are the different classes, the different majors, the different schools, um, the different instructors. That would be the actual product that you will get within the concept of organization and services. And then you have the augmented. So the augmented at the university would be the health services, the placement, career placement services, the psychological counsel services, the sport facilities that you may get, the food services that you may get from the university. Um, Maybe from the fact that you will become a student union type of thing and you would have services through the student union, being some help with payments and credits and so forth. So all of these generates the products that people will get for so it's not just if you go to a concert, it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. So you have to think about the merch, oftentimes it's something you're thinking of. You have to think about the how do you get the tickets. You have to think about the food that maybe people will get there, the seats, the quality of the seating, the quality of the audio. This many onion within this onion uh, will be very important. The fact that there will be several screens, um, the fact that there will be the possibility to buy um, the the recording of the concert, the fact that there will be drones giving you all kinds of maybe activation, immersion inside the concerts. All of these onion within this onion will be the total product that people will get. Another concept is the fact that when you buy a product, there is different level of involvement. Low involvement means you quickly make a decision to buy the product. The price is not very important. The quality is not very important. If making a mistake is not very important. You can easily change your mind, change the product. You don't have too much loyalty. That's the convenience product. So you buy candy, you buying soap, you buying shampoo, things that may not be very high level for you. In my situation, I will be high level, for example, on soap, but someone else may not be. So it's not universal. It's just everyone is a little different compared to these. Shopping product will be like a TV, a washing machine, a car, um, a computer. But then specialty products will be things that are much more, not once in a lifetime, but it's more very much more infrequent. So specialty may be a graduation gown. I mean, how many graduation gown have you bought in your life? Not too many, I suppose. How many wedding gown have you bought in your life? I mean, you're not supposed to buy more than one. Um, and how many wedding ring have you bought? How many, so specialty doesn't mean it's only one time because, I mean, it may be something is expensive. I don't know, Ferrari or Rolex. Some people may be buying Rolex once a month, but that's not very common. Most people will buy one, two, three in their life, and one, two, three of these rare things. So luxury products tend to be specialty products that are very advanced. I don't know, maybe you're buying a fancy or music systems, or I don't know, Bang& Olufsen or something like that. Bang& Olufsen, very expensive audio systems. So it's not like Sony or something like that. You don't buy them very often. And unsought product is the one that has multiple criteria. It's unsought because you don't know about it, which is the most common. There's so many brands that we don't know. We don't know every product. We don't know every brand of camera. Um, we don't know every brand of toothpaste. We don't know every brand of everything. So there's brands that we just don't know. But there's also brands that we might not qualify for. So, there may be very little that I know about um, contact lenses, for example. I don't wear contact lenses, but someone that wears contact lenses may be caring for the different brands and type of contact lenses. But if you don't wear any, a cane, for example, the other day I saw a cane and I was thinking, gee, I hope I never need one. And so it's unsought because I don't think I need one. I mean, like funeral services, it's something that everyone, there will be no survivors. Let's not take ourselves too seriously. And that's funeral services. Everyone needs funeral services, but it's something usually people think as they get much older. Um, and so that's all the unsought type of products and the different four categories that exist. When you developing a portfolio of brands and products, you have to think about the product mix. So the product mix is composed of the width, the depth, and the length. So the width is how many variation do we have? So if I was to talk about, for example, BMW, so BMW would have a four-door sedan, two-door coupe, convertible, um, four-wheel drive SUV, motorcycle. So each one of these makes a width. So coupe, convertible, sedan, four-wheel drive, motorcycle, so that the width will be 5. But the depth would be how many variation which within each one of these 5. So let's say they have within the coupe they have 2 coupe, the convertible they just have 1, the sedan they have 5, the SUV they have 8. So the depth is the variation within each one of the category inside the portfolio. And then the length is the sum, the total of all the variation that the company brand will be offering. So the product mix is when you make a decision is therefore, is it a decision to add to the depth of one of the existing category? Is it a decision to add a new category? If, like, for example, BMW was to create a, a, a van, for example. I don't think BMW has a van, but they would want to make a van that would the van will be a new width, an additional width to the five width I just mentioned before, and therefore that's that's um, that's important. Just to go from there, I would say what's important as well is to look at the concept of stretching, of product line stretching, which means that sometimes what you do is you try to take advantage of the fact that you are very, let's say, a luxury brand will be going downward stretch. So you're like Giorgio Armani, then you will go downward by creating Armani Exchange, Emporio Armani, or Giorgio, for example. And so what you do is you have Giorgio Armani, which is the ultra luxury, very expensive brand, haute couture, um, inaccessible, ultra wealthy people buy this. And then you will go um, Emporio Armani, it would be a lower level, where it will be people that are well off and so forth. And then you will have Giorgio for the young people, Armani Exchange, you know, sort of for the masses, and you will take advantage of this. But you could go from downward, like Toyota, and then you'll create Lexus, for example, where you try to build a more upward brand extension. So the idea behind this is that there are different customers. Do you ignore the customers or do you satisfy the customers? Uh, Satisfying all customers, obviously every business wants to do that, but you have to think about the capacity of your brand to extend itself and be able to be representative in another upward or downward. If you go downward, you may be damaging the main brand, the original main brand. If you go upward, it is possible that your brand will have require a significant amount of improvement. I mean, we see this, for example, right now with a Korean brand of within the automobile industry is you have Hyundai, then they create Kia, which is more like a younger crowd, and then they create Genesis, which is supposed to be the more upward, and they try to create those brands in order to speak to different group segments and targets that they are trying to fulfill by having a proposition which is concentrated or proposition that is differentiated at the beginning in order to grow. Then just to finish with the product is you have the concept of packaging, which is obviously very important for objects, but packaging are very important. You can have a disruptive strategical packaging proposition that makes your product significantly recognizable, differentiated, and perceived as much better value. Because it's not so much the innovation of the packaging, but it's the purpose of the packaging in response of a problem. So Pringles, what was the problem? People did not want to eat potato chips that were different. One is like this, one is like that. One is like this, one is like that. They wanted consistency. They didn't want their chips to be cracked. And so they created the Pringles inside the tube because it creates consistency. And the people that like consistency in the proposition, presentation of the product will get it. It's recognizable. It's sort of an insurance of the chips to be consistent. Go-gurt. Well, what they found is that people didn't want to eat yogurt because you needed a spoon. And people said, it's too much work, it's too many things to do. I just want to be able to eat it. And so they created the paste because with the paste, you didn't need anything. You could eat. And they also saw that people were eating while they were moving. So with the paste, you can actually get people walking, doing something, traveling or whatever, and eating the product without requiring the product. So the idea of the tube is in response to a problem. It's not a creative person at Yoplait that came up with the tube. It's someone that did some marketing research and then created the product in response to the need of the customers.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Before we get into it, I want to introduce our team. My name is Theo, alongside with Adrian, Anthony, Kenyon, and Eshe, and we are the marketing masters. Our group will be presenting our client case for Harpcore. We're not just describing what the band is doing, but offering a clear strategic direction for growth. And this case is really about helping an independent act build a stronger identity, expand awareness, and create a repeatable strategy that will works even with limited resources. So with that, let's start by grounding ourselves in the client. So first off, who exactly is Harpcore? Harpcore is an independent rock band based in Los Angeles. They're not a major mainstream act yet, but they do have an existing presence both online and in live music circles. And that's important because this isn't a band that started from zero. They already have the foundation of identity, a sound, and a niche audience. But the challenge is turning the foundation into consistent growth. So the question becomes, how do we help hardcore move from being a band with some presence into a band with a clear lane and momentum? To answer that, we begin with two main objectives.
So our strategy is built around two core objectives, which the first one is to increase the online brand presence for Harpcore, which would lend into creating a stronger social media consistency and a stronger digital identity. And it will also create a more professional web presence for them. And then our second objective is to be increasing the industry awareness, especially through the two channels that matter most for Los Angeles as an indie rock band, which would be live shows and sync opportunities. So we're thinking about growth both in terms of fan and community, but also industry visibility and then monetization. And then these objectives guide everything that we're going to recommend. We then looked inward at Hardcore and we saw what was already working for them. So in our internal snapshot, we saw that hardcore has real strengths already. They have a unique and recognizable identity. They have strong talent, and then they have a look and sound that stands out. But at the same time, we could see that their constraints are also clear, which would be a low budget and limited social presence. So the implication here is important. Hardcore doesn't need a complex and expensive marketing plan, but they need something more focused, repeatable, and low cost, something that they can actually sustain because consistency beats intensity when the resources are limited. Then we zoomed outward to see what's happening in the broader environment.
All right. When we look at the external environment, there are actually several trends working in hardcore's favor. For example, the continued growth of anime culture globally, YouTube discovery as a major music pipeline, streaming becoming the default norm, and then the increasing upside of sync listening for niche artists. What this tells us that hardcore doesn't need to compete in the broad rock market. A niche aligned strategy can outperform broad marketing, especially when the niche has cultural momentum behind it. That leads directly into the strategic question. What direction should hardcore lean into?
At this stage, we outline several possible strategies paths. Strategic paths. Option A, adopting towards more popular genres. Option B, enhancing live performance. Option C, expanding digital distribution and streaming growth. And option D, focusing on the anime market with sync licensing potential. And the key point here is this. Hardcore cannot do all of these at once. The band needs one central spine strategy, one core lane that everything else builds around. So, after evaluating fit and realism, we landed on a recommendation. Our main strategic bet is animated niche, sync credibility, conventions and live monetization. This works because anime audiences already value strong aesthetics, emotional intensity, and internal and alternative acts. It also works because this strategy is realistic on a low budget. If hardcore stays consistent, they can build credibility in a specific cultural lane instead of trying to market to everyone. So the spine becomes anime's alignment builds identity, sync builds legitimacy, and live conventions become the monetization engine. To make that real, we applied STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning.
So looking at our strategy, we had to define exactly who Harpcore should focus on, and that's where STP comes in. Our primary target is the anime subculture globally, but especially in the US and LA, where there's already an active scene for this kind of music. This audience is highly loyal, very quality driven, and open to unique or international sounds. That naturally fits Harpcore's identity. So instead of reshaping the band to match a mainstream audience, we align with a group that already values what they do. So the position here is clear. Harpcore should lean into being music for anime culture rather than trying to compete in the general rock space. And that focus becomes really important when we think about what happens if they don't stay in that lane. One of the biggest risks for emerging artists is trying to market to everyone. When you go too broad, especially with a limited budget, you lose clarity. The brand becomes harder to define, harder harder for fans to connect with, and easier to overlook. But when you focus on a niche like anime culture, you build identity and community much faster. And even digital platforms respond better because there's a clear audience. So the idea isn't to limit Harpcore, it's to build transaction in a space where they already make sense and then grow outward from there. Now, to execute this strategy, there are a few critical success factors.
All right. To make this work, HarperCore needs consistency in four areas. First, authenticity. This niche only works if it feels real. Second would be consistent music creation with a fuller and stronger sound over time. Third would be consistent social engagement, especially YouTube content. And lastly, network and collaborations, because sync and live opportunities are relationship-driven industries. And the strategy isn't about viral luck. It's about repeatable output and community alignment. So what does this execution actually look like over time? Okay, so our execution timeline is built as a campaign flow. At the start, the focus is consistent YouTube releases. This could be performance videos, anime-themed edits, repeatable formats, something sustainable. Then in the mid stage, the goal becomes packaging for sync, building an EPK, outreach to music supervisors, and organizing contracts. So the first phase builds audience and identity. The second phase builds industry legitimacy. And then we move into the conversion and momentum. So in the conversion phase, the strategy expands into conventions, expos, and live performance momentum. Anime culture is extremely event driven, so hardcore can monetize through real community spaces, not just streaming. And then the end phase is also about repeating the cycle. New content, new outreach, new opportunities, and stronger audience. This becomes a growth loop, not a one-time campaign. So to close, let's look at the full strategy. So we think our recommendation is a focused first strategy that ties directly back to hardcore's two objectives: online brand growth and increased industry awareness through sync and shows. Success looks like this: stronger digital identity, niche credibility, and then real opportunities in sync and live performance. So the main idea is that hardcore doesn't need to do everything. They need one clear lane executed consistently. And now we'd love to open it up for questions. Thank you.
Great. Well, exciting for me is because I wanted to see the connection of this with last Saturday. Remember last Saturday we stayed together quite a while, discussing in particular. What did we discuss for a while? I mean, let's see if I'm not. You have memory of what happened. What is the subject that we spoke for a long time without saying how long.
We
Transitions.
discussed.
I'm okay, I'm gonna say it. More than 30 minutes.
Okay, so we discussed the SWOT and how it would be presented, and we would have to
Exactly.
decide whether or
Exactly.
not we wanted to include it in other ways where it's not so upfront, which is the most modern way to do it. And if we wanted to do the traditional framework, that we could add it to
The
an
appendix.
appendix,
Exactly.
and that if we added it to the appendix, it it could be longer in the explanation, like you could have in more bullet points. And
Exactly.
also in framing the SWOT analysis within your framework for your different strategies, that you don't want a long sentence. You want to get it right to the point because you don't want to force people to read the frame. So four, five, maybe 5 words to get your point across is good, and have at least six, no, 5 bullet points with sources.
Exactly. Fantastic. You
Ashay,
see,
Ashay's been waiting for you to ask that question all evening.
Oh,
no, it's worse than that. I emailed her the question, and so that's why she was prepared.
Oh, okay. Well, so are
No, no,
you
I'm
telling
just
me
kidding.
you give that to the students? You're like, hey, Casey, I'm going to ask this question. So,
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Casey, for jumping in and saying that. No,
no,
yeah.
he even took a deeper dive than that. He asked us, what is the one opportunity for Pleiada? And we couldn't come up with it. And emailed him, and I didn't see your answer, but
Oh,
did I
did you?
did I hit the nail on the head?
When did you email me?
Oh my goodness, I emailed you yesterday.
Oh, yeah. I need to check again because I didn't see it. Huh? Just so you know, I would have responded. So I will check this. Or you could send it to me again if you don't mind.
Okay, I'll send it
Yeah,
to
send
you.
it to me because I didn't see it. Because if anyone sends me, uh,
Is it better to send it through CSUN or through
no, no,
Command?
no, just straight email, just a simple email, send it to me. I'm like a kid looking under the tree. If you send it to me, I'm not gonna wait. I want to see your opportunities because
Okay, I want to
I'm
see
a,
it. I'm gonna
this is
send it.
important for you, but it's important for me because I want this to be a success. And so I don't have the opportunities. I'm relying on you for the opportunities. So I
Man,
want
I was
I want to
digging
see.
yesterday. I was like,
Wow. Okay, so send it. I'll look at it tonight. If you
okay.
send it to me tonight, I'll look at it for tonight for sure. But what Ashley said was correct. So that's why Casey jumped in because she nailed it. She remembered exactly the discussion and what we're trying to say. And what's nice is you did it today for our core. So this is I don't know if anyone else besides you really benefit from this presentation, but I know that you've benefited from this presentation because you did the Valley Hive within the hardcore program this time. You've got your opportunities, you've infused together the strengths and weaknesses, and this was done by Anthony, right?
Yeah.
Anthony, you did the infusion, and we didn't hear enough of the competitors, if we think about it, right? You didn't tell us much about the threats, so maybe you would want to not forget about the threats here. Talk about the competitors, talk about the the problem with the type of music that they are doing, because this rock and roll thing, without vocals, it's not really a growing type of. It is not
No, it's not.
growing. It's not. So there's still improvements that you could do, but obviously, if I take what you did for the Valley Hive and what you did today, the combination of the two, and obviously, I don't have to ask you, I think, within what Ashley just said, your group has understood what is going on that you need to do. But the key here is finding the opportunities. Once you found the opportunities, then it's just going to unfold from there, but you need to have them. And then just remember this in case I look at it and I tell you, oh, it's correct, it's good. We need to find strategic opportunities. And so now, just to use the hardcore, saying that the animated manga industry is growing, is this, and for hardcore to change their music and focus their business on the manga, is this a tactical or strategic direction?
It's a strategic direction that's supported by their strengths. They already perform.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that the
It
right
is.
answer?
Yeah, yeah. It's a
I'll take
strategic.
800.
No, it's correct because it's strategic because first they have to now they have a product that is set for a market, and therefore it's not a short-term thing, it's the entire direction. Everything about this business is going to turn this direction. So it's a big decision and it's a long-term commitment to do this. So it's strategic. And that's what you have to find for Plaita. Now, there's a few more minutes, there's 12 more minutes, and I want to say something which is in relationship to what we just talked about in my lecture today and what will be coming next week. So everyone should listen to, but the people that should really listen to are the people that will be presenting Alex Ritchie next week. Hopefully they
One
are listening.
one thing I did leave out
Yeah,
that you really hammered on was the transitions. You really wanted us to present not as classmates, but as consultants
yeah,
presenting professionally. So we really
exactly.
had to nail
The
the
transitions, yeah.
transition from one slide to another.
Yeah, so I didn't feel the transition. Like there was no more. Theo is going to speak now, and I'm going to pass it to Kenyon, and Kenyon's going to speak now, and he's going to pass it to Adrian, and Adrian starting to say, as you can see on this slide, right? We don't want any of this. Okay, so there was none of that. What's missing at the end is I'd like to see a timeline, right? So you want to see a timeline, you want to see a recap, and you want maybe more why or whatever. So I know hardcore is not your baby, so you didn't give it the 400% like you will do on Playita, but remember to do this.
Okay.
So now, opportunities, where do they come most of the time from? From the customers. Now, Alex Ritchie next week. Alex Ritchie is a singer that has been rewarded by many vocal singing competition. So there's no problems with him singing. He started singing when he was 2, 3, 4 years old. I don't remember the exact, but he started singing very young. He's from a Mexican, I think Mexican Venezuelan, but anyway, Mexican something background. And since he's little, he's been with his family, going to church and going to mariachis. He does mariachi bands, he does all of this. So that sets the scene. You'll do this. I'm not doing the presentation for you, but I give you a flavor. What's important with Alex Ritchie is to not try to do it in the context of today. That's one thing I want to say, which makes it a little difficult because the market may have changed in the past, whatever, 4 years that it was done. So the group should not worry so much about trying to make Alex Ritchie in 2026, 27, because that's too much work. We're not asking you to do a full thing for Alex Ritchie, but just be able to present the case. And what the case is Alex Ritchie is becoming more and more a reggaeton singer. And if you're looking at the market of reggaeton, you see it's growing. But there's one thing that you see is that the largest consumer of reggaeton, so that's an opportunity, I'm just stating that. The largest consumer of reggaeton in America, back then at least it was, were Mexican Americans. Number one. Number two, Mexican Americans is the biggest South American group who live in the United States, so it's not insignificant. Three, the Mexican Americans are very patriotic of things that have to do with Mexico. And like I said, they are the one listening to the reggaeton. However, the reggaeton, almost all the reggaeton people, I think, are from Puerto Rico. Please, my apologies if it's not Puerto Rico, but I think it was back then. And therefore, Alex Ritchie has an opportunity here, which is to be the Mexican voice of the reggaeton for the Mexican that likes the Mexican people involved in whatever things, and they're very patriotic. So eventually, that's what the students found out, that there was a good match. Like Ashe said a few minutes ago, it was a good match between his strengths and what the market was showing as a potential dynamic of those Mexicans and reggaeton that likes the reggaeton and so forth. But what he had to do is to embrace more of his Mexican culture and push more of his Mexican culture forward in order to really be this Mexican singer for reggaeton. And so when we presented that to Alex Ritchie, he absolutely loved it, and he actually felt very confident in actually wearing dressing like mariachis and selling and singing reggaeton and build this more Mexican culture within the reggaeton, and to please the Mexican American people to actually like more reggaeton by Mexican Americans versus reggaeton by Puerto Ricans. And so that's pretty much what the core of the presentation is. A, it's a segmentation targeting opportunity of a specific group of people who are the main force behind the consumption of a product, and the client to fully embrace this group and become the voice or become the brand for that group, for them to come towards him, having the quality of the singing, his songs, his videos were very good and all that. So that was not so much the problem. The problem is he was sort of not trying to be Mexican. He was trying to be nothing special within a group of singers that were clearly Puerto Ricans, and that was clearly the archetype, that the yeah, the archetype of the singer that was expected. So he would sort of break a trend and be recognized by the people that were actually cared of the reggaeton. So this plus the tactics is essentially all the things that you will have to present in Alex Ritchie. And if you want to bring some of your own ideas, that's fine. I mean, there was another idea with Alex Ritchie that was actually really good, but it was more tactical versus what I just told you. This is more strategic because it's called market development. That's a strategy. But there was another one which was his second interest beside music was soccer. He was a fan of soccer, and he would look at soccer every day, and he would one of his favorite things was to comment soccer. And so the students had the idea of maybe for him to become, to build visibility and followers, was to, because he was also very prolific, he would actually write a little song pretty much every day. And they told him there was another thing tactical that he could do is to write a song that would have to do with some kind of situation, daily situation in the world of soccer, and write a little song and just post it. So that's a lot of work, but it's from the perspective of Alex Ritchie and the interviews that we had, it didn't look like it was impossible. I mean, this was not a full song. It was just a short little spin, that he would be posting and so forth. And he was like a good-looking guy. He had a lot of followers that were ladies, and he seemed to be really attracting the ladies. And it's not like, for example, Playita. I don't know if the people that they attract now are the people that they should attract in the future. But when it came to Alex Ritchie, whoever he was attracting at the time was really the people he should kept attracting, because he looked really like a good-looking young Hispanic guy and so forth, and it was very had a lot of charisma and so forth. So that was sort of the profile that those ladies were looking for. Dora, I see that you've been waiting. I just wanted to finish this, yes. So go ahead. What is your question?
Yeah, thank you. Just listening to the feedback you were giving,
Yes.
Harpcore, and something that you've brought up a bunch is strategic opportunities versus tactical opportunities.
Yes.
And that's something that I get kind of caught up on, like under like recognizing whether something is strategic versus
Yes.
tactical. So I was wondering if for next class you could dive a little bit more into like the differentiating between the two, and also um for Playita, do you only want strategic opportunities or are some
So,
tactical good
yeah,
too?
so some tactical are good too, but here's what happens. Because I've done this for 31 years, it takes me 25% of the time to get my classes to understand what are opportunities. Once they
Yeah.
start understanding what is opportunities, most of the opportunity they will give me are tactical. Like this person is a good influencer, posting on Tuesday night is the good time for TikTok. Um, Using YouTube is good for this. Going to this concert and doing this, buying merch in red shirt is good. All of these are tactical opportunities. People like red, people like this theater venue, and all of this. What is strategic is the next stage, and that takes 70% of the time. 20, 30% of the time is for people to understand what is opportunity. And once they understand what's opportunity, then I can morph them into differentiating. And I think right now the class is just at that time that they're starting to all everybody understand. No, I get it. Nobody's giving me the feeling that they don't understand, but it's recent. You know, it's after
Yeah.
the Valley Hive and all that. That's why I build all of this. They are like
Right.
steps. You know, it's like step, 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 step. Nobody is born and start running the minute they born. Everybody has to go through step, 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 steps. And so the step
Yes.
here is now everybody has the opportunity. So your question is correct. But what happens is from this opportunity, what's the outcome? Is it a strategy or is it a tactic?
Mm.
So if the outcome is a strategy, these are great. So now you tell me, if I have six, how many do you want strategic? How many do you want tactical? That could be the question. And I would say, well, you could have just one that is strategic as long as it's big enough. Like for example, hardcore. The manga is the strategic, and every other one, the next five ones are tactical. Is it okay? It's okay because the manga takes it all anyway. It's gonna take
Mhm.
everything of hardcore. But does it look good? It doesn't really look good because it's one plus five, you know. So then what does look good? Well, I think it looked better if it was three and three on four strategic and two tactical. Because the as long as I know and I that you know that you have five tactical and one strategic and you're okay because you're going to focus all on the strategy and everything else is going to be to support it, and that's inside the presentation is okay. The problem is when I get people that present six opportunities and they go for the bigger one and everything else, they think it's still strategic, but they're not, they're tactical. So
Mm.
you can have just one strategic and it's fine. It doesn't have to be six strategic, but you can't treat the tactical as if they are as strategic as the rest.
Got it. So like the main focus should be that strategic opportunity that
Yes.
we're
Yes.
where we can also find those tactical opportunities fitting in that kind of.
Yeah, exactly. They'll support it.
Right. Okay. Got
They
it.
will. You know, it's almost like a battleship fight. Is you have the carrier ship, right? And around the carrier ship, you have the battleship. The battleship are supporting the carrier ship. You know, and that's what it is. It's like an army that you're creating, and this army of ideas are going to support the entire stories. But you don't want to treat the supporting things as if they are the main. And if someone was to go back to the video since the first day, is I would say the opportunity is the hardest thing, but that's not even the hardest thing. The hardest thing is to find strategic opportunities. I keep saying that because
Yeah.
that's really what it is. And so that's why there's some like hardcore. They found those strategic opportunities, I think, 2 days before it was due. And then they were done. And it was a great presentation. The client absolutely loved it. It was life changing for them. But if we didn't have these, all we had were tactical opportunities. Oh, use YouTube
Right.
for this, go to that concert, post this and do that. You know, it was very execution plan. This is still useful, but it's half job as best at best. So finding strategic opportunities, and here, what's the strategic opportunity for Alex Ritchie that you will see next week? The strategic opportunity for Alex Ritchie next week is that the largest consumers of reggaeton are Mexican Americans. And in his strengths is, you know, pretty boy, young, good singer, won the John Lennon Best Singer of the Year, and is Mexican American, and plays mariachis, and has charisma. And then you take that with the specific market that you want to focus on, you know. So then we told him, you need to do videos with mariachi dressed like with a big sombrero.
Mm,
The bigger the sombrero, the better. And that's what he did. And then he would give us feedback. He says, oh my God, look at my videos now. I multiply by 10 the views on my videos because I'm adopting a Mexican culture based reggaeton, which is pleasing the audience that is looking for,
right.
you know. So yeah. And that's strategic because it's a market development thing where you suddenly focus on that group and grow that group and so forth. And so that's why you see
Got it.
the story of
Thank you.
Alex Ritchie is the customer. The story of Harper is the customer again. So the opportunity that comes from the customer is the best one and the most common one. Is once you identify that group of customer and you go, oh my God, it's great. Um, you know, and it's not always easy with the band to tell the truth. With music, that's what's tough is to find that audience, that unique audience, which has the best match for the musician. Oftentimes, what you have to do is you have to tweak the musician in a way that they become something special. And sometimes, you know, I mean, that's the job of a record company is to do that tweak, to do the research, to say, you know what, you need to dress that way, you need to sing this. You need there's some pushing in some direction. If they really want to succeed, it's rare that it's a natural, organic thing. There needs to be some understanding of the market and doing it for a specific audience. And that's what's annoying, but it's a business. And so,
Excuse me, Professor.
yes.
Um, I copied and pasted the email in chat.
Oh, in the chat.
Yeah, I couldn't put the whole thing, but you'll get the gist.
Okay. But what I'm getting is a PDF, right?
No, it's just copied and paste from the email.
Okay, okay. Let me see.
It's in the chat.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So there's the entire email. Okay, okay. I see it now. But is it just to me? Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah.
you.
Yeah, because I was wondering if you send it to everyone, that would not be
No,
confidential. Okay, okay. I got it. I see it there.
proprietary.
Okay, got it.
You got it?
Yes, I did. So
What you
I'll
think?
respond to you.
Huh?
I will respond to you after the class.
Okay.
All right?
I see a smile on your face.
Okay, excellent, everybody. If you have no other questions, we're good for tonight. We're not meeting anymore Saturdays, I don't think. The only Saturday will be the last one for the presentation to the client. So, but perhaps you could use those Saturdays or whatever. Just organize yourself to work on the client. Obviously, finding those strategic opportunities, not just opportunities, is really the big piece here, and finding the good match for that client, the whatever tune-up tweaks that needs to be done. You know, you can't tweak the clients. You can only tweak the product, meaning the musician. So find the client and then tweak. Find the client that is the best suited, not the one that is furthest away, the closest away. And then you adjust the client and that would be awesome.